The galaxy had forgotten many things over 10,000 years. It had forgotten the taste of true war. It had forgotten the sound of human laughter and human rage. Most importantly, it had forgotten why the ancient warning beacons still floated around a small yellow star at the edge of the Orion Arm. Ambassador Al stood on the bridge of his diplomatic vessel and stared at one of those beacons through the viewing screen. The object was old, older than his entire civilization. Strange symbols covered its surface, and his translators struggled to make sense of them. The words that finally appeared on his screen made his 4 hearts beat faster. "Do not wake the sleepers. Do not remind them of war." Al was young for an ambassador. His blue skin had not yet developed the deep wrinkles that came with age, and his large black eyes still held the curiosity of youth. He had grown up hearing stories about the Terrans, the humans, the sleeping monsters of Sol. Every child in the Confederacy knew the tales. Humans were violent. Humans were unpredictable. Humans had nearly destroyed the galaxy before they mysteriously vanished. But those were just stories, Al told himself. Myths passed down through generations. The Confederacy had ruled the Orion Arm for thousands of years, and in all that time, no one had seen a living human. Perhaps they had truly died out. Perhaps they had never existed at all. "Ambassador," his pilot called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the High Council." Al turned away from the warning beacon. "Put it through." The holographic image of High Counselor appeared before him. She was ancient, her scales faded to pale gray, her eyes clouded with age, but her voice remained strong. "Ambassador Al," she said, "the Council has voted. The quarantine zone around Sol is hereby lifted. You are ordered to proceed to the 3rd planet and conduct a full survey." Al felt a chill run through his body. "High Counselor, the warning beacons are 10,000 years old," interrupted. "Whatever danger they once warned against is long dead. The Hive pushes deeper into our territory every day. We need resources, Ambassador. We need the metals and minerals locked away in that forbidden system. Your fears are understandable, but they are based on children's stories, nothing more." Al wanted to argue, but he knew it would be pointless. The Hive had been spreading across the galactic rim for the past century, consuming everything in their path. They were a parasitic species that absorbed other life forms into their collective. Already, 3 Confederacy worlds had fallen to their hunger. The Council was desperate. "I understand, High Counselor," Al said quietly. "I will proceed as ordered." Nodded, and her image flickered out. The journey to the 3rd planet took only a few hours. Al spent most of that time reading old records about the Terrans. The information was scattered and incomplete, more legend than history. According to the oldest texts, humans had appeared suddenly about 15,000 years ago. They spread across the stars with terrifying speed, building ships and weapons unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They fought wars against species that tried to stop them, and they won every single time. Then came the war against the Architects. The Architects were a machine race, ancient and powerful. They had ruled the galaxy before any organic species had achieved. When they decided that organic life was a mistake that needed to be corrected, every species in the galaxy united against them. But it was the humans who led the charge. It was the humans who built weapons that could kill gods. And it was the humans who ultimately destroyed the Architects in a battle that entire star systems. After that victory, something changed. The humans looked at the destruction they had caused, at the fear in the eyes of their allies, and they made a decision that no one understood. They retreated to their home system. They built the warning beacons. And then they went silent. For 10,000 years, no ship had entered the Sol system. For 10,000 years, the galaxy had slowly forgotten. Al's ship entered orbit around the 3rd planet, a world the old records called Earth. What he saw made him gasp. The planet was covered in ice. Great glaciers spread across continents that had once been green and alive. But beneath the ice, Al's sensors detected something incredible. Massive structures made of metal and crystal stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Cities, perhaps, or something else entirely. They were cold and dark, but they were intact. "Ambassador," his science officer said, her voice trembling, "I am detecting energy signatures beneath the southern ice cap. They are faint, but they are definitely artificial. Something down there is still powered." Al felt the chill return to his body. "Can you identify the source?" "Negative. The readings are unlike anything in our database, but whatever it is massive. We are talking about a facility that could hold millions of individuals." Millions, the word echoed in Al's mind. Could it be possible? Could the humans still be alive, sleeping beneath the ice of their frozen world? He was about to order a closer scan when every system on his ship went dark for a single second. When power returned, a sound filled the bridge. It was a voice, speaking in a language that the translators struggled to decode. The words were harsh and angular, filled with sounds that no throat could produce. Finally, the translation appeared on his screen. "Perimeter breach detected. Initiating revival sequence. Sleeper protocol terminated." Al stood frozen as alarms began to wail across his ship. On the planet below, lights were flickering to life beneath the ice. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Millions. "Ambassador," his pilot whispered, "what do we do?" Al could not answer. He could only watch as the planet that had slept for 10,000 years began to wake up. And somewhere deep in his mind, a single thought repeated itself over and over again. The stories were true, the monsters were real, and he had just woken them up. He thought of the warning beacon and the words carved into its surface. "Do not wake the sleepers. Do not remind them of war." He understood now. The warning was not meant to protect the Sol system from the galaxy. It was meant to protect the galaxy from what slept within. And now it was too late. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, Commander Danny Cole opened his eyes for the first time in 10,000 years. The cold hit him first. It was not the cold of the cryogenic pod which had kept him frozen in dreamless sleep. This was the cold of waking, of blood beginning to flow again through veins that had been still for. He gasped and coughed, his lungs burning as they remembered how to breathe. Red lights flashed above him. An automated voice spoke calmly through the speakers. "Revival complete. Welcome back, Commander. The date is Galactic Standard Year 14,217. You have been asleep for 10,247 years." Danny sat up slowly. His muscles ached, but they still worked. The genetic enhancements his ancestors had developed ensured that his body would survive the long sleep without damage. He looked around the revival chamber and saw hundreds of other pods opening, hundreds of other humans gasping their way back to life. A woman stumbled out of the pod next to his. She was shorter than Danny, with dark hair streaked with gray and sharp, intelligent eyes. Dr. Price, one of the scientists who had designed the sleeper protocol. She had been old when they went to sleep. She looked exactly the same now. "Did it work?" she asked, her voice rough from disuse. "Are we still ourselves?" Danny flexed his fingers and felt the familiar weight of memory settle back into his mind. He remembered everything. The wars, the victories, the terrible decision they had made 10,000 years ago. "We are still ourselves," he said, "for better or worse." More pods opened, more humans emerged. Danny recognized many of them. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, artists, the best of what humanity had been. They had chosen to sleep together to wait for a day that they hoped would never come. But it had come. Danny made his way to the command center, following close behind. The facility was enormous, stretching for hundreds of kilometers beneath the ice. It had been built to house 10 billion people in suspended animation, along with all the technology and knowledge they would need to rebuild if they ever woke up. The command center was already active when they arrived. Automated systems had been maintaining everything for 10,000 years, and now Those systems were coming fully online. Display screens showed the status of facilities across the planet. All of them were waking up. "What triggered the revival?" Danny asked. One of the technicians, a young man named, answered. "Perimeter breach, Commander. An alien ship entered orbit about 2 hours ago. Our sensors identified it as belonging to something called the Confederacy." Danny frowned. The name meant nothing to him. The galaxy had been very different when humanity went to sleep. Whatever civilizations existed now were strangers to him. "Are they hostile?" "Unclear. They have not fired on us, but they are scanning the planet heavily. They seem confused." Stepped forward. "Commander, we need to assess the situation before we take any action. We went asleep for a reason. We cannot just emerge and start another war." Danny remembered why they had slept. After defeating the architects, humanity had looked around at the galaxy they had saved. They saw the destruction they had caused. They saw the fear in the eyes of the species they had protected. Humans were too powerful, too violent, too unpredictable. Their very existence threatened the peace of the galaxy. So they had made a choice. They would sleep. They would remove themselves from the universe and give the younger species room to grow without fear. The sleeper protocol was designed to wake them only if the galaxy faced a threat it could not handle alone. The protocol would not have activated for a simple survey ship, Danny said. Something else triggered it. Find out what. It took only a few minutes. The automated systems had been monitoring galactic communications for 10,000 years, recording everything, waiting. When displayed the relevant data on the main screen, Danny felt his blood run cold. "The Hive," said. "They have been expanding across the galactic rim for the past century. They are a parasitic species that absorbs other life forms into their collective. 3 Confederacy worlds have already fallen." Danny stared at the genetic analysis of the Hive. He recognized the patterns. He had seen them before, 10,000 years ago. "They are descendants of the swarm," he said quietly. His face went pale. "That is impossible. We destroyed the swarm. We burned their home world. We hunted down every last colony." "Apparently we missed some." Danny's voice was hard. "They evolved, adapted, changed their name and their form, but they are still the same enemy we fought before. They are still hungry." The swarm had been one of the deadliest enemies humanity ever faced. They reproduced rapidly, consumed everything in their path, and could not be reasoned with. Destroying them had taken decades and cost millions of human lives. And now they were back, spreading through a galaxy that had no idea how to stop them. "Bring the alien ship to us," Danny ordered. "Do not harm the crew. I want to talk to them." An hour later, Ambassador Al stood in the command center, surrounded by humans. He was shaking. Danny could see the terror in his large black eyes. "Please," Al whispered, "please do not kill me." Danny felt something twist in his chest. Was this what they had become? Monsters that made peaceful diplomats beg for their lives. "No one is going to kill you," Danny said gently. "We are not what your stories say we are. Not anymore." Al looked up, confusion replacing some of his fear. "Then why did you sleep? Why did you hide for 10,000 years? Danny was silent for a long moment. How could he explain? How could he make this frightened creature understand? "We slept because we were tired," he finally said. "Tired of war, tired of being feared. We hoped that if we went away, the galaxy would learn to live without us. We hoped you would never need us again." He looked at the displays showing the Hive's expansion, the worlds consumed, the species destroyed. "But here we are because you do need us, and this time we are going to do it right. This time we are going to save you without making you afraid of us." Al stared at him. "Can you do that?" Danny did not answer. He was not sure anyone could, but he knew one thing for certain. Humanity was awake. The galaxy had forgotten why it should fear them. Now it was time to remind the Hive instead. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The humans were awake. The sleeping monsters of Saul had risen from their 10,000-year slumber, and no one knew what would happen next. On the Confederacy capital world of Prime, panic gripped the population. The streets emptied as people hid in their homes. Parents told their children the old stories again, the tales of human rage and human destruction. Ships fled the system by the hundreds, their crews desperate to escape before the ancient enemy arrived. In the council chamber, High Counselor faced a room full of screaming delegates. Half of them demanded immediate surrender. The other half demanded war. None of them knew what they were talking about. "Order," shouted, her old voice cutting through the chaos. "We will have order in this chamber." The room slowly quieted, looked at the frightened faces around her and felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her shoulders. She had ordered the quarantine lifted. She had sent Al into the Sol system. This was her responsibility. "We have received a message from the human leadership," she said. "They are sending a diplomatic envoy to speak with us. His name is Cross." The chamber erupted again. "A trap," someone shouted. "They want to get inside our defenses." Others cried out for the envoy to be killed on sight. "Silence them with a look. We will receive the envoy. We will listen to what he has to say. We are civilized beings, not animals. We will not start a war out of fear." But even as she spoke, she wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. 3 days later, Cross stood before the Confederacy Council. He was an ordinary-looking man, neither tall nor short, with brown hair turning gray at the temples and calm gray eyes. He wore simple clothing without weapons or armor. He looked nothing like the monsters of legend. "Counselors," he began, his voice quiet but clear, "I know you are afraid of us. I know the stories your ancestors passed down. Many of those stories are true. We were violent. We were dangerous. We made terrible mistakes." The chamber was completely silent. Every eye was fixed on the human. "But we also learned from those mistakes. That is why we chose to sleep. We removed ourselves from the galaxy so that you could grow without our shadow hanging over you. We hoped that by the time we woke, if we ever woke, things would be different. We hoped we would be different too." He paused, looking around the room. "I am not here to threaten you. I am not here to conquer you. I am here because the hive is coming and you cannot stop them alone. We can help. We want to help. All we ask is that you let us." A delegate from one of the outer worlds stood up. "Why should we trust you? Your kind nearly destroyed the galaxy once. How do we know you will not do it again?" Nodded slowly. "You do not know, you cannot know. Trust must be earned, and we have not earned yours yet, but I ask you to consider the alternative. The hive grows stronger every day. They have already consumed 3 of your worlds. How many more will fall before you except that you need us?" The debate continued for hours, answered every question with patience and honesty. He did not make promises he could not keep. He did not threaten or demand. By the time the council called for a vote, something had shifted in the room. Fear had not disappeared, but it had been joined by something else. Hope, perhaps, or desperation. The vote passed by a narrow margin. The Confederacy would accept human aid against the hive. Far from Prime, Admiral stood on the bridge of a ship that had not moved in 10,000 years. The vessel was called the Resurrection, and it was the largest warship humanity had ever built. 20 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack planets, it was a monument to human power and human fear. "All systems coming online," her chief engineer reported. "Weapons operational, engines at full capacity. We are ready, Admiral." Looked at the display screens showing hundreds of other ships powering up around her. The human fleet was waking, and it was more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen since the war against the architects. "I have been asleep for 10,000 years, she said quietly, "and I still hate the thought of war." Her first officer, a young woman named, stepped closer. "Maybe this war will be different. Maybe we can end it without becoming the monsters they think we are." Wanted to believe that. She truly did. But she remembered the old wars. She remembered what humans were capable of when they stopped holding back. She had seen worlds burn. "Contact Commander Cole on Earth," she ordered. "Tell him the fleet is ready to move, and tell him," she hesitated, "tell him I hope he knows what he is doing." On the far side of the galaxy, the Hive Queen known as felt something she had not felt in a very long time: fear. Her vast consciousness spread across billions of Hive drones, and through them she had sensed the awakening. The humans were back. The ancient enemy, the ones her species had been created to destroy, had risen from their long sleep. The architects had made the first hive as a weapon against humanity. They had designed her ancestors to be the perfect counter to human aggression, human creativity, human stubbornness. But the humans had won anyway. They had burned the hive worlds and scattered the survivors across the void. For 10,000 years, the remnants had hidden and evolved and grown strong again. Now the final battle was approaching. Halted her invasion. She pulled her fleets back from Confederacy space and began to gather them for something else. The Galactic Archive, the ancient repository of all knowledge, lay at the heart of the galaxy. Within it were the locations of every human colony, including the hidden ones that had been scattered across the stars before the long sleep. If she could reach the archive first, she could find those sleeping colonies and destroy them before they woke. She could end the human threat forever. She gave the order, and 1 billion hive ships began to move. On Earth, Al stood before a window and watched the human city come to life around him. For days now, he had been a guest of Commander Cole, allowed to observe the awakening firsthand. What he had seen had changed him. These were not the monsters of legend. They were people, strange people, fierce people, but people nonetheless. They laughed and cried and loved and grieved just like any other species. They had chosen to sleep rather than risk hurting the galaxy again. What kind of monster did that? He thought of his family, of everything he had been taught to fear, and he made a decision. "Commander Cole," he said, "when you speak to my people again, I want to be there. I want to tell them what I have seen." Cole looked at him with those strange human eyes, and for a moment Al saw something ancient and tired behind them. Then the human smiled. "Ambassador," he said, "I think that might be the best idea anyone has had in 10,000 years." Human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the cluster, and the galaxy held its breath. Captain Hart stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Revenant, the most powerful warship ever built by human hands. Around her, 100 other vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their engines glowing with the light of captured stars. Alongside them came the ships of the Confederacy, smaller and less powerful, but willing to fight. Ahead of them waited the Hive. Had studied the enemy during the journey. The Hive had evolved significantly since the old wars. Their ships were larger now, covered in organic armor that could heal itself during battle. Their drones were smarter, more coordinated, more dangerous. But at their core, they were still the same hungry swarm that humanity had faced 10,000 years ago. "Enemy fleet detected," her tactical officer reported. 2,000 ships, mostly cruiser class. They are moving to intercept." 2,000 against 100. Any other species would have retreated, smiled. "All ships battle formation Alpha," she ordered. "Show them what we can do." The human ships moved with perfect precision, spreading out into a wide arc. Then they opened fire. Weapons that bent space itself lanced across the void. Missiles that contained miniature black holes tore through organic hulls. Beam weapons that burned at the temperature of stellar cores cut Hive cruisers in half. In the first 30 seconds of battle, 300 enemy ships were destroyed. The Confederacy vessels hung back, their crews watching in stunned silence. They had never seen anything like this. They had never imagined anything like this. On the bridge of a cruiser, Ambassador Al watched the battle unfold. He had asked to be here, to witness the human way of war. Now he understood why his ancestors had been so afraid. The humans did not fight like the Confederacy. They did not probe and test and slowly wear down their enemies. They struck with overwhelming force, hitting hard and fast, giving the enemy no time to react. Each human ship seemed to know exactly what every other ship was doing, moving together like the fingers of a single hand. Within an hour, the Hive fleet was destroyed. Not defeated, destroyed. Every single ship, reduced to burning wreckage drifting through the void. Looked at the carnage on her display screens and felt no joy. She remembered the old wars, when victories like this had been cause for celebration. Now she only felt tired. "Casualty report," she said. 3 Confederacy vessels damaged, no human losses. Enemy casualties total. 0 human losses. It seemed impossible, but knew it was not. Human technology had advanced significantly during the centuries before the long sleep. They had weapons and shields that the rest of the galaxy could barely comprehend. Against the Hive, they were practically invincible. That was what frightened her. On the ground, Sergeant Bell led his squad through the ruins of a Confederacy colony that had been infested by the Hive. The planet had fallen 6 months ago, its population absorbed into the collective. Now the humans had come to liberate it. The Hive drones attacked in waves, thousands of them pouring out of organic structures that had grown over the original buildings. They were fast and savage, their claws and teeth designed to tear through armor. And his soldiers moved through them like a storm through leaves. Their powered armor made them stronger and faster than any drone. Their weapons never missed, and they never, ever stopped advancing. When a soldier fell, their comrades did not pause to mourn. They kept fighting, kept pushing, kept killing until there was nothing left to kill. The Confederacy survivors they rescued looked at them with the same mixture of fear and awe that Al had shown. Wanted to tell them that there was nothing to fear, that humans were not monsters. But the blood on his armor and the fire in his eyes told a different story. After the battle, a young child approached. She was small and blue-skinned, her large eyes filled with tears. Her parents had been taken by the Hive. She was alone. Knelt down to her level. He removed his helmet so she could see his face. "What is your name?" he asked gently. The child whispered, "Hello, my name is, I know you are scared. I know everything seems terrible right now, but I promise you we are going to make sure no one hurts you ever again. Do you understand?" The child looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly and reached out to take his hand. Behind him, heard one of his soldiers whisper to another, "Why do we fight so hard for strangers?" He did not answer. He did not need to. Every human knew why. They fought because it was right. They fought because someone had to. They fought because long ago they had decided that their strength would be used to protect, not to conquer. That was the promise they had made to themselves before the long sleep. That was the promise they intended to keep. Back on the Revenant, received a message from the Witness. The Witness was an ancient artificial intelligence, older than the long sleep itself. It had recorded all of human history, observed all of human triumph and tragedy. Now it served as an advisor to the fleet. "Captain Hart," the Witness said, its voice calm and measured, "I have analyzed the Hive's movement patterns. They are not fleeing toward their home territories. They are moving toward the center of the galaxy." Frowned, "The center. There is nothing there except—" "The Galactic Archive," the Witness confirmed. "The repository of all knowledge, including the locations of the hidden human colonies scattered across the universe before the long sleep. If the Hive Queen reaches the archive, she can find those sleeping colonies and destroy them before they wake." Felt cold rage flood through her veins. The hidden colonies. Billions of humans still asleep, still dreaming, unaware that an ancient enemy was coming to murder them in their pods. How long until the Hive reaches the archive? Approximately 72 hours. 72 hours. Not enough time to call for reinforcements, not enough time to plan a proper assault, but enough time to catch the hive before they reach their goal. Set course for the archive, ordered, maximum speed, and contact Commander Cole on Earth. Tell him we are going to need every ship he can send. She looked at her bridge crew, saw the determination in their eyes, and knew they understood what lay ahead. This was not just another battle. This was the final confrontation. The Hive Queen was running, trying to strike at humanity's most vulnerable point. She had made a mistake. Humans did not have vulnerable points. They only had reasons to fight harder. All hands, announced over the ship-wide communication system, prepare for combat. We are going hunting. The fleet accelerated toward the heart of the galaxy, and behind them the stars seemed to burn a little brighter, as if the universe itself was watching, waiting to see what would happen when the sleepers finally showed the galaxy why they had been feared for so long. The Galactic Archive hung in the void at the center of the galaxy, a megastructure so vast it could be seen from light years away. It was old, older than any civilization currently alive. Its creators had long since turned to dust, but their knowledge remained, stored in crystalline matrices that would last until the stars themselves burned out. The Hive arrived first. Billions of drones poured out of their ships, swarming over the archive's surface like insects on a corpse. The Queen herself descended into the structure's heart, searching for the data that would allow her to destroy the sleeping human colonies. She found it just as the human fleet arrived. Captain Hart looked at the tactical display and felt her stomach tighten. The archive was covered in hive forces, millions of drones, thousands of ships, all protecting their queen as she downloaded the location of every hidden human settlement. "We are too late," her first officer said quietly. "Not yet." Opened a channel to Commander Cole, who had arrived with the rest of the human fleet. "Commander, we need to get boots on the ground inside that structure. Can you do it?" On the assault carrier behind the Revenant, Danny Cole looked at his team of soldiers. They were the best humanity had to offer. Veterans of the old wars, enhanced and trained and ready to die if necessary. "We can do it," he said, "but we will need a distraction." Smiled grimly, "I think I can arrange that." The space battle began. Human and Confederacy ships crashed into the Hive armada like a hammer striking an anvil. Energy weapons lit up the void. Ships exploded in balls of silent fire. Drones died by the millions, but more always took their place. The Hive fought with the desperation of a species facing extinction, because they knew that was exactly what was happening. In the chaos of battle, a single human slipped through the defenses and crashed into the archive's surface. Danny led the assault team into the ancient structure. The corridors were dark and strange, built for beings that had died before humanity evolved. Hive drones attacked from every shadow, and the humans killed them without slowing down. Ambassador Al was with them. He had insisted on coming despite Danny's objections. He carried a weapon borrowed from the human armory and wore armor that was too big for his slender frame. He was terrified, but he kept moving forward. "Why are you here?" Danny asked during a brief lull in the fighting. Al's voice trembled. "My people feared you for 10,000 years. I want to show them that we can be brave too, that we can stand beside you, not just behind you." Danny looked at the alien ambassador and felt something warm in his chest. Perhaps, he thought, this war would be different after all. They reached the archive's core just as the Queen finished her download. She turned to face them, and Danny saw something he had not expected in her compound eyes: recognition. "Human," she hissed, her voice echoing through the chamber. "I remember your kind. My ancestors were created to destroy you. It is the only purpose we have ever known." "Then let us give you a new purpose," Danny said. "Surrender, live in peace. We do not have to be enemies." The Queen laughed, a horrible clicking sound that made Al shudder. "Peace. You killed billions of my kind, you burned our worlds, You hunted us across the stars. There can be no peace between us. There can only be victory or death." She raised her claws and attacked. The battle was brutal and short. The queen was fast and deadly, her body designed specifically to kill humans. But Danny had been fighting for centuries before the long sleep. He had killed creatures far worse than her. When it was over, the queen lay dying at his feet, her eyes fixed on Danny with something like confusion. "I do not understand," she whispered. "You could have killed all of us. Why did you offer mercy?" Danny knelt beside her. "Because we are tired of killing, because every death diminishes us, because we want to be better than we were." The queen's eyes dimmed. "Then you are fools. Weakness is death." "No," Danny said quietly. "Kindness is strength. That is the lesson we learned. That is why we slept. And that is why, despite everything you have done, I wish things could have been different." The queen died without another word. But her death triggered something, buried deep in the archive systems. Explosives planted by the hive began to activate, enough to destroy the entire structure and everyone in it. Price worked frantically at a console trying to stop the countdown. "I can contain the blast," she shouted, "but someone needs to manually override the primary relay. It is in the central chamber." Everyone understood what that meant. Whoever went to the central chamber would not be coming back. Danny started to move forward, but Al stopped him. "No," the ambassador said, "let me. You do not have to do this." Al smiled, though his eyes were wet with tears. "Yes, I do. My people spent 10,000 years hiding from you. They need to see that we can be heroes too. They need to see that the galaxy does not need to fear you anymore because we can stand beside you as equals." Danny wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in Al's eyes. He understood. Sometimes courage was not about surviving. It was about what you were willing to sacrifice. "Thank you," Danny said. Al ran. He reached the central chamber as the countdown hit its final seconds. He threw himself at the override console, his borrowed armor sparking against the alien machinery. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the countdown stopped. Al slumped against the console, the energy discharge having burned through his body. He was still alive, barely, when Danny reached him. "Did it work?" Al whispered. "It worked. You saved everyone." Al smiled. "Good. Tell my people. Tell them we do not have to be afraid anymore. Tell them the humans are not monsters. They are just people, strange people, but good people." He died in Danny's arms. Above the archive, the battle ended. The Hive fleet, leaderless and desperate, tried to flee. Most did not make it. The survivors scattered into the void, broken and beaten, no longer a threat to anyone. Weeks later, a monument was built on Earth. It stood in the center of the rebuilt capital city, a towering statue of an ambassador reaching toward the stars. The first alien ever honored on human soil. At the dedication ceremony, Commander Danny Cole addressed a crowd of humans and Confederacy delegates. His voice was quiet but carried across the plaza. "Ambassador, Al taught us something important. He showed us that courage is not about being unafraid. It is about being afraid and acting anyway. He showed us that trust is built through sacrifice, not words. And he showed us that the galaxy we woke up to is worth protecting." He looked at the faces before him, human and alien alike. "We slept for 10,000 years because we were afraid of ourselves. We were afraid of what we might become if we stayed awake. But Al showed us another path. He showed us that strength and kindness can exist together, that we do not have to choose between being powerful and being good." Admiral stood beside him, her eyes wet with tears she did not try to hide. "So this is our promise," she said. "We will not sleep again. We will stay awake and we will help you build a better galaxy, not as conquerors, not as monsters, but as neighbors, as friends, as family." The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the applause began. It started with the humans and spread to the aliens, growing louder and louder until it echoed off the buildings and seemed to fill the entire sky. Years later, Danny stood before a classroom of children. Some were human. Some were from species he had never seen before. They sat together on the same benches, learning together, laughing together, growing up in a galaxy that no longer remembered fear. One of the children raised her hand. "Commander Cole, why did the humans sleep for so long?" Danny smiled. "Because we needed to learn something important. We needed to learn that real strength is not about destroying your enemies. It is about protecting your friends. It is about knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. It is about being brave enough to admit when you are wrong." The child thought about this. "Did you learn it?" Danny looked out the window at the city beyond, at the human and alien buildings standing side by side, at the ships from 100 worlds filling the sky. "We are still learning," he said, "but we are getting better every day." And somewhere in the vastness of space, the warning beacons around Saul went dark. They were no longer needed. The galaxy had finally learned why it should not fear humanity. Not because humans were weak, but because they had chosen to be kind.